Hey everybody, welcome to today's video. My name is Schlayer. Today I just wanted to go over my Tarkov settings. These are the settings I prefer to enjoy. It's like a perfect medium ground of performance, yet also good visual quality. I'm usually able to see everybody just fine. The shadows aren't overly muddy or overly just bright as heck. Makes the game look pretty good, and I wanted to share that today. One thing I would like to disclose right out of the gate is all of our settings are totally different on all of our computers, so take that with a grain of salt. I didn't do anything inside of Nvidia Control Panel or change registry files. I didn't want to go through all that trouble. I wanted just to give a basic guide on how to make your game look a little bit better, get some FPS out of it through the in-game settings first, and then we can maybe come on to an advanced guide later on. And if you wanted to check out a lot of those guides online, there's guides I think from like 1Peg and Pestily and those guys, so definitely go check those out as well. So the first page we're going to pop up into the settings, which is the cog in the bottom right, is the game settings. Down in the bottom here is something I wanted to initially point out. You can turn on automatic RAM cleaner if you have 16 gigabytes of RAM and lower. It was definitely clogged for me up until I decided to go to 32 gigs, and now it's running roughly around 20 to 23 gigs in total. It is something you might want to check if you're having some performance issues. And then only use physical cores. I haven't actually tested too much of this. I've heard some things saying like AMD is really good with only using physical cores since it is a multi-threaded CPU. I have a 2700X. I've had this checked for a little while, and then I've also had it unchecked, and I haven't really seen any differences too drastically. Something I may try to go into further down the line. Going into the graphics tab, like I said, I have a Ryzen 7 2700X, so it's like getting a little outdated now. I also have an Nvidia RTX 2070 Super, so it can play 1440p just fine. So going into texture and shadow quality, these two things you cannot change while you're in RAID. So you're gonna have to either go into a raid, try things out, and then come back and change things. Or what I do is I just go into offline raids without any sort of PvE, and then you're able just to kind of go in, run around, see what the graphical differences are, and if there's any FPS differences. I like to have texture quality on high and then shadow quality on low. If I have the texture quality on medium, it's not like horrible. And then with shadow quality, if I go into the mediums or highs, it seems like the shadows get a little too black, so it's harder to see enemies in some of the shadowy regions. Once we dive into post effects in a minute here, the overall general look of the game before adding any post effects has gotten re-updated, and things look a little more contrasty, so definitely take that into effect if you're going to be changing some of the shadow qualities here. Next is object LOD quality. I personally like to have this on 3. Most people I see either have that on 2 or 2.5, just kind of rather have a little bit more textural depth into the game. Next is overall visibility. This is more like render distance on like trees and stuff like far out in the distance. If you have things above 1500 to 2000, and then of course above that, it gets pretty like useless, I would say. You can see pretty much everything rendering in at 1000. Anything below that is a little too boxed in, I would say, feeling like you'll see a lot less and feel like the game hasn't even loaded in at all. So I would keep that maybe on 1000, 1500, one of these two. Personally, I like 1000. Next up is anti-aliasing. This is all personal preference again. A lot of people like to play with really sharp looking graphics, so anti-aliasing turned off makes everything look super jagged. And then jumping into TAA and TAA high, that makes everything a lot more smoothed out and more rounded looking, so a lot less jagged edges everywhere. But the game does look a hair blurrier in a sense, though in my opinion I don't see any sort of differences. Like, it looks really good in TAA. Going into resampling, 1x off just means you're going to be playing the game at 1440p. If you want to downsample in different ways or super sample up to like a higher resolution like 4K or something, you can definitely do that, but there's really no need. With HBAO, SSR, and anisotropic filtering, I have all those turned off. If you have an Nvidia GTX 900 or above, I would definitely highly recommend using reflex low latency. It will take a little bit of a hit to your performance, but what it does is it pretty much aligns game engine work to complete rendering and eliminates the GPU render queue. So the latency reduction is pretty nice, and I do like using it. You can also turn this on to boost if you have the extra GPU power. Sharpness is a definite personal preference. I like to put mine to 0.7, so maybe use this as just like a guideline, and you can kind of mess around with that. And then on the bottom here, these are all just kind of like little preferences to make the game look better. Only one I would maybe check on is high quality color. you can turn this on or off. This is up to you depending on how you use PostFX. All right, I jumped into a quick offline raid into customs here. As you can see, it's a nice, beautiful sunny day. So we're going to use this as kind of like a little general guideline of just making your PostFX. Come to PostFX, and there's a cool button down here that actually says visualize. So you can go into here and then can see exactly what you're visualizing. And then you can just change everything to how you would like it. So if we turn off PostFX, this is what the game looks like on its own. Actually, let me apply this and we will just look at the game here in a second. So, I mean, it actually looks really decent. It doesn't look bad at all. It is very flat for sure, but it's not overly flat in the sense of how it used to be. With the new visual upgrades, everything's gotten a lot more dark in the shadows, a little more contrasty, and overall, like inside's a little more muddy, I would say. And so getting into a different post effect is pretty nice, and I don't really see too much of a hit in performance, so I would recommend making some sort of changes to PostFX. So we'll go back here and then we'll click PostFX. Right now we're sitting around 87, 88 FPS. So if we just click PostFX on and apply, again, we're sitting here at 87, 88 FPS. Like nothing didn't drop. Like if you thought it was going to be like a huge hindrance to turning on different colors and like take like a 10% hit or something, yeah, sure, maybe that's not worth it. But it really isn't hurting anything. So I decided to put everything off or on low for the lowest possible settings. Other than Nvidia Reflex, we'll just keep that on. It's gonna look pretty bad, so let's see. Oh yeah, look at that. This is pretty much unplayable, and we're literally only sitting at another like 10 FPS. We're sitting at 105 right in here. We'll use this spot to do all the tests in. Alrighty, we loaded back in. We changed everything to around roughly a medium setting, turned on TAA and aliasing. For now, let's see how this looks. And wow, it looks already so much better. You can actually see a lot more detailing into the trees, of course. It's still a little like blurry in the backgrounds, but once you zoom in on things, it actually doesn't look too bad. We're sitting around 92-ish FPS, 90 FPS. And one thing I did not test in the low quality was using like a scope, but when we aim down sight with something like a huge 8x, 6x, all that, you will see a noticeable hit in FPS. We're roughly around 70 right now. As long as you can stay above 60, I think that is pretty darn good. All right, we moved everything over to the high settings now. As you can see, everything's pretty much maxed out except these middle filters and then everything down at the bottom. We'll do that as like the ultra big bang test. But for now, here is what we have. We're sitting into the mid to low 80s. That's kind of what I expected, but it's a little more FPS than I actually thought it was going to be. Everything looks pretty darn crisp. As you can see, like on the EOTech site, it's crystal clear. All the detailing is crystal clear too. As you can see within the roadblocks, they're all very well detailed. Nothing's like jaggedy edged or just kind of smoothed out. Car looks really nice. And then if we look down sight, looks like we're getting into the 60s now, so around mid to high 60s. All maps are going to be different, so that's kind of the downside. So you're just going to have to find that fine balance between all the maps kind of put together. And of course, right when I go and edit, I noticed I didn't even put in my settings. So here they are once again, sitting around 88 FPS, 92, 91, 88. So it's just bumping right into the 90s here. It's a good balance point. The overall looks are really nice, but I also get a good general FPS. We ADS, looks like we're about 70, 68, 70. Yeah, so it's keeping above 60, so that's what I'm happy with. Lighthouse, definitely not above 60, but at least here we are. All right, so we're gonna do the crazy ultra high setting one. These are more cinematic settings and nothing I would recommend playing with per se, but we just wanted to show you anyway. Here it is. We are sitting at a good 43 FPS right now. But man, does it look awesome. Well, that should be it for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed it and got some benefit out of it. Hopefully you're getting your settings kind of more fine-tuned and to your liking. If you like these kind of videos, definitely give it a like to pass it around to other people and subscribe for more content here. We're going to have a lot more Tarkov content coming around, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.